him. Do you see him?
I'll take both. Thank you. Now looking from here, it looks like they all might be females, or maybe there's a few juvenile males in there. We do have names for all these whales. We've been documenting them since the 50s. So the way we're going to identify them, we're going to try and figure out how many members there are, and say it's like 4 females, then okay, that we can narrow down the search to maybe 3 families, because they are traveling in a family here. We call them pods. If we can't tell just based on the number, we're going to look at their dorsal fins, that black triangle you see. Because sometimes they have these notches that help us identify them. Looks like there's one little cat. That's what we do. Yeah. We'll take some photos. So Patrick and I, we're going to be on our cameras. We're going to try and get some names for you guys. But one thing that's for certain is that these guys are what we call transient orcas, or big killer whales. So they're the ones that go after marine mammals in particular, and that's partly the reason why they're going so close to the shoreline. They're looking for seals and sea lions to eat.
Yeah.
So we used to call these guys transients because we thought they did these really, really long migrations, but honestly, they just go to where the food is, and most of that food happens to be around Vancouver Island. But they go as far north as Alaska, and they've been documented as far south as California, hence the name transient. But nowadays we call them Biggs orcas after the scientist that did a lot of work on them. His name was Michael Big. Basically in the 50s, and throughout, he would just take photos of all these orcas, and he would try and figure out who's the mom, who are the kids. And we've been updating this catalog since then, and I have the catalog right here. So now we kind of know what they all look like. We're going to hopefully get a name for this family soon. But typically when we're naming these whales, we'll give them a name like T87, for example. So T stands for transient. That's the type of orca that we're looking at. 87 is just the individual identified in sequence. But if that individual has kids, the kids would be T87A, T87B, T80, so on and so forth. But say you have like T87A give birth, the kids would be 87A1, 87A2. Which honestly, those names kind of suck, so we do like to give them actual names. Oh, my favorite whale name. Chainsaw is cool. And we call him Chainsaw because his dorsal fin actually looks like a chainsaw. Let me see if I can find a picture of him. Here we go, Chainsaw. The notches in that fin there, bit like a saw. Yeah, most of the time they get these notches from fighting with sea lions, because they eat sea lions, yes, but sea lions, they're roughly related to the grizzly bear, so they're pretty feisty. They'll always attack back. And that's kind of how we can identify these orcas. You can see some of them have scratch marks as well, and that's exactly from those sea lions.
What is the name of this island?
This one here is Gabriela Island. No worries.
How long do they live?
Females will live up to about 80 years of age. Males seem to die sooner. They'll die around the age of 50. Partly because they make poor life choices, much like humans.
Just like us.
Go ahead, man. I mean that seriously though, because we do have a lot of crab traps here, and it's always the juvenile males.
Oh.
They will go play with the crab traps, and sometimes they get entangled.
Yeah.
Like we have one. His name is Indy, short for Indiana Jones. And so we got a direction change here. And yeah, he basically abandoned his family to go play with traps. So if he dies, it's because he's doing that.
Follow your dreams, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. I'll keep referring to these guys as transients, and I'm doing this because we have 3 other types of orcas over here. Worldwide, there are about 14 ecotypes. Here, we have 3 of them. So these ones are the transients. They go after marine mammals. And like I said, they eat seals, sea lions. Sometimes they go after porpoises, and they do go after humpback whales. But if they go after a humpback, they will attack it as a group because it is a lot bigger. If they kill the humpback, then they will only eat the tongue and the lips of the humpback whale and nothing else. They're very picky. For the other types, we have one called the resident killer whale. We have the northern population and the southern. The southern ones are famously endangered. They number at about 73, and it's been like that for the past 10 years. And part of it is because they have a very picky diet. 80% of their diet is Chinook salmon. The other 20% is things like chum salmon. So they don't really want to deviate from that. However, there was a study released last year that suggested that now they're eating cod. So there is hope for them, but we think there's a 25 to 40% chance that they will go extinct in our lifetime. And then our last one, they're called offshore orcas. We don't really get them in here, but they're more open ocean, as the name suggests. They go after a lot of big fish and sharks. But if they go after a shark, they'll only eat the liver of the shark and nothing else. They're very picky, yeah. I feel like once you're at the top of the food chain, though, you can afford to be a bit picky. There we go. So a bit of white there. We're looking at the bottom part of that tail fluke. And I did see a bit of slapping on the water. This is kind of how they communicate. They don't really vocalize too much. They like using a lot of sound signals though. And that's because they are stealth hunters. If they're making a lot of noise, mammals like seals, they can hear really well. They can detect the orcas from far away and they'll get to safety. So oftentimes when these guys hunt, they'll just go through the waterway, not making a single sound, and they're just listening for their prey. definitely not a photo of either. Okay. So we think we have an idea about who we're looking at here. Let's see if I have the page. I mentioned we had a whale named Chainsaw. Here's another example. We have one called Hacksaw. Same deal. A bit of a skirmish with the sea lion, but Hacksaw got a little bit more beat up. So we think we have two different families here. Let's see if we have a page for it. One of them is going to be a group called the 86As, and I was able to determine that because the mom has two notches, one near the top of her dorsal fin and one near the base of the dorsal fin. I can only think of 5 whales that kind of have that figuration, and based on it being all females, I think it might be this family group. But I do not have the page here. However, if it is in fact that family group, the mom here, her name is T86A. She was born in 1988, but she goes by a nicer name. She has the name Eider. And then she does have an injury in her lower jaw that prevents it from closing all the way. So sometimes when we see her pop her head out of the water, it's just wide open. And if it is her, she'd be traveling with one of her daughters here, Nahani, born in 2001. And Nahani did have a calf as well pretty recently. And as by recently, I mean earlier this year. Hence why we're seeing a little tiny one. And I don't know if you can notice, but with the tiny one, it has a bit of a different coloration. Orcas, they have that white eye patch, white underside, but for the cap, it's more of an orangey color. And that's because the caps, when they're born, they don't have that much blubber insulation surrounding their body, so their blood vessels are very exposed to the surface, giving it that coloration. As they continue to grow more and more, they build up more weight, and their eye patch becomes more white. Petra thinks she got a photo of another family group here, which is called the 124As. Let's see. But not the entire family. It'd be one female with the name Savio, born in 2010, and she'd be here traveling with a daughter born in 2021. And same deal, because Savio has very distinct notches in her dorsal fin there. So yeah, like I was saying before, the females will live longer than the males. It is partly because of the males' life choices, but another big thing is the toxins that are in these waters. There's a lot of runoff coming from a lot of farms, a lot of industrial areas, pumping in chemicals into the ocean. A lot of those chemicals are lipophilic, meaning they're fat-loving, so it binds to their blubber, which is very rich in fat. So when these guys aren't eating that much, they rely on their fat reserves. And when they're relying on those reserves, they're taking in a lot of those toxins. The males have no way of getting rid of it, but the females do, because it is through their breast milk. The breast milk takes a lot of that blubber, and the milk itself is about 50% in fat. And they're able to excrete that milk from their body, carrying all those toxins, so they basically cleanse themselves. And because of that, they're able to live for longer. With that said, if they have a calf, usually with the very firstborn calf, there's a 50% chance that it'll die in the first year or two because of the accumulation of toxins that it's getting. As they continue to have more and more kids, they're able to live for longer. And in their lifetime,
What's the survival rate for the young ones?
50% for the firstborns, and then survivability in general is roughly around, if you have to average it, it's going to be around 65%. And then in their lifetime, a mom will probably have about 5 calves, roughly. I've seen moms who've had 7 calves. I've seen a few who've only had 2. For Savio over here, she is 16 years old, So she'll be having more calves. The other one that we have here, she's born in born in '88, so she's almost done with having calves. Because with these orcas, they'll actually go into menopause around the age of 40.
Was it having interval?
Every 3 to 5 years. And part of that is because the gestation period for these orcas is 18 months. And of course, once the calf's born, it has to be weaned for about 6 months all the way up to 2 years.
Name straight up.
So for the females, they'll start having calves around the age of 10 and continue to do so until the age of 40.
Where's the boy of the T86?
Say again?
The song of the T86.
The song of it?
Yes, not here.
Oh,
So I
we,
don't know.
yeah, we haven't really seen it as of yet. We're still trying to figure out who. We think it might be half of the 86s here.
Oh, I see.
Because if we did have all the 86As, there would have been one very, very distinct one. Tyndall, she has a very deep protrusion in her dorsal fin, and I haven't seen that yet. And like all menopausal species, they are a matriarch. That means the females run the show. So you basically have mom and her kids. Mom's teaching them how to communicate, how to hunt. Oftentimes she'll even dictate who they mate with. She will choose the pod they go hang out with and kind of nudge to her calves to go, hang out with the other ones.
The males get excluded from the pod to prevent inbreeding.
Inbreeding, no, we don't really see inbreeding too much. I only know of one family, the T69s. They have a case of inbreeding, but for most of these guys, they don't really do that. I think part of it is because of their language too. So there are a lot of studies that are suggesting that they have a universal language, but what happens is that the daughters, as they continue having calves of their own, they'll split from the main pod, and then that daughter decides to change the language a little bit, have a bit of an accent. That way her kids can distinguish themselves with her. And then as they split more and more and more, you get these dialects. So orcas, whenever they are mating, it seems to be with a pod that has a very, very distinct accent. So we think that's a way that they can prevent inbreeding. The males, they'll be with mom for the rest of mom's life. They're big moms. To the point that if mom dies, they'll go and find a new female to adopt and as the new mom. Or if they have a sister, they will make the sister the new leader of the new mom. I would never say that to my sister, but these guys. And then for the daughters, it's not so much age, it's when they have, say, 2 calves of their own, maybe they'll split off. Because if you're traveling in this massive family, you're going to be more detectable to your prey, so it's easier to split off. That way you're more stealthy. Oh my goodness. This calf is having so much fun.
Not anything, nothing.
They have mating seasons.
No, just year round, whenever they feel like it. Yeah. And they're one of the only species where even after menopause, they will mate for fun. And yeah, sometimes these guys will decide to go up to Alaska, and that'll just happen at any point of the year. They'll just decide to take a vacation. Similar to us, we'll wait for the price of fuel to go down, and then we'll decide to do a trip somewhere.
Yeah.
Let's see. Now, let's see. So for Sabio and her calf, for the family itself, they've been spotted as far north as Alaska, and they've been as far south as Oregon, United States. And then for the other ones, 86As, as far north as Alaska and as far south as Washington, and they have been spotted in the open ocean before too. for both of these ones, since they're going up to Alaska, it's possible that they're eating moose as well. Because what moose? Yeah, I'm not kidding. Because moose, what they'll do is they'll swim from island to island to look for food. It's common with deer as well. Orca is twice the size of a moose, and there are moose carcasses that wash up on shore with bite marks on them. And when they found that, they thought originally, okay, it could be sharks, but the bite marks are a perfect match to the teeth. And like I imagine a moose can handle themselves on land, but when in the water, probably not that much.
It's kind of like a TV show.
And yeah, they are pretty famous for using echolocation. The way that kind of works is they have melon. It's basically in their forehead. They're able to emit these high frequency pulses, emit the sound. That sound travels through the water column, bounces off an object, and it gets received again in their lower jaw because it's connected to their eardrum. That's how they're able to hear. And that's how they're able to pinpoint something as small as a coin from about 200 meters away. It's very precise. However, we find that with these guys in particular, they don't really use echolocation that much just because they are stealth hunters. So like I said, they're just listening in the water, listening for some prey. In contrast, if you were to come across the resident killers, they are vocalizing so much and they're using echolocation a lot because they're going after fish, and fish are not exactly as smart as, say, a seal or a sea lion. And for the three ecotypes, they don't really get along together. Whenever the resident killer whales come across these transients, the residents, they kind of chase them out of the area. And within the residents, at least for the southern resident population, we have J-pod, K-pod, L-pod. Oh, they'll reach there. J-pod, they kind of dominate this area, and they will sometimes chase the other ones. Whenever K and L-pod come into where we are, it's because J-pod has vacated the premises. Yes. We had one to realize here, it was the northern residents, the southern residents, and the transients. The ones that got out of there the quickest was the transients. They started going full speed. Followed by the northern residents. I like to think of them as the introverted whales. They saw the southern residents and they do like to communicate with them sometimes, but this time, no, they didn't want anything to do with them. Studying their language, they have something called discrete calls, which is our equivalent of sentences. These guys, they have about 7 of them. The residents, it's about 45. So they're very, very social. Oh, wow. And what we've been seeing this year is that with the young calves, sometimes they will be babysat, much like humans. So the mom, Sabi over here, there might be one day where she wants a little break from her daughter, so she will find a family, drop off the calf with them, and then she will go off and do her own thing. Whales, it's done very, very professionally. We do it through a Facebook group chat. So it's a group chat between whale watching companies, a few scientists that do work on these whales, and a couple of indigenous communities like the Inuits, the Haida, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam. And we'll all just make a post like, hey, what do we want to name this whale? And we try and keep a common theme with them. For example, one of my favorite groups, they're called the T90s. We named them after Winnie the Pooh characters. We got Mom, who's evil. We got Piglet, Tigger, Eeyore. I think there was a Pooh, but she died when she was very young.
I saw them yesterday.
You did?
Yeah,
The T90s. Where were they?
T90s. Around Deepco.
Deep.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, all the way from the Sterling Park.
They're getting more brave. They keep going into the cove quite a bit. So yeah, the 123s went up there as well.
Sterling.
Yeah, it was up there. And then not so long before that, the 101s, they went up there. And this behavior that you're seeing, this is very common for them. So they'll just surface quite a bit. Maybe they'll go down for a deep dive. They might dive down for 5 minutes. Could be longer. Longest dive I've seen was 32 minutes. And they just kind of go along the shoreline. Once they find something, they'll hunt. The way they hunt, they basically swim at a fast speed, maybe up to 50 kilometers an hour. They slam their body against their prey so that it stuns their prey, immobilizes it. And at that point, they'll grab onto it, bring it back to the family, and together they'll tear it to pieces so that they can all eat. And it sounds gruesome, but part of it is because they cannot chew their food. So they have to tear their food into smaller bits so that they can actually swallow it. But sharing is going to be a very common thing. It's usually one member doing the hunting for the rest of the family. Prime example, we have a family called the T2Cs. There was a male named Tumbo. He was born with a condition called scoliosis. So because he had scoliosis, his spine was deformed, he could never swim fast, and he was always seen trailing behind the family. And because of that, we thought he wouldn't be able to hunt. We thought that he was going to die in the first year or two. But he actually lived for 15 years, simply because the family did all the hunting for him. They would kill a seal, they would bring it to Tumbo so that he could have a fair share. We have documented under other hunting tactics over here. Sometimes you'll see a viral video of a seal flying 30 feet in the air. That usually happens when an orca goes underneath the seal, hits it up with its tail, and that tail has so much power that, yeah, you see a seal flying up, coming down with a bit of a splat to do the same thing, stun it, immobilize it. But also they do it for fun. Sometimes they'll go after some shorebirds like puffins and just hit them up in the air. Another hunting tactic was documented in 2016. One of the males from the T65s, he decided to jump onto the shore to grab a hold of a seal. And he did it perfectly. He did a surprise attack, seal did not expect it, he got the seal. He was also stuck there for about 3 hours on the shore. So DFO had to come on scene, put a bunch of water on him, and they waited for high tide, and then finally he was able to wiggle himself free. He has not tried that hunting tactic again since. But there is a group of orcas that have mastered this. If you go to Argentina, this one ecotype, they've mastered just hiding themselves in the wave, jumping onto the beach to grab a hold of some sea lions. And it's because the mothers have been teaching this for generations. It's been knowledge that's been passed down. And it's the same tactic every time. So mom will go with her calf, show the calf how to ride the wave and jump onto the beach, how to wiggle themselves free. Once the calves get a hang of it, she'll get them to do it by themselves and grab onto some kelp. Kelp's a nice stationary target. They can practice doing a surprise attack on that. Once they master that, mom will go onto the beach, grab a hold of a sea lion, bring it out into the water. She won't kill it. She will injure it so it's very slow moving, and the sea lion will be let go. The sea lion tries to get back on land, but very slowly. Those calves get to practice on that slow moving sea lion. Down and we can hear the orcas laughing at this when the boat falls into the water. They're just not having it. And that's literally what it is, yeah. And now they're trying to figure out tactics to scare away the orcas. So people are painting scary faces on the bottom of the boat. The most successful one is that they've installed a speaker to their dagger board that emits these orca alarm calls, and that seems to work. Because with orcas, they have a universal call that's like, hey, danger. Much like humans, like we have different languages, but whenever we cry and laugh, it's a universal sound. Orcas, it's kind of similar. Laughing, crying, same sound.
I guess, yeah.
Wow.
And another thing these orcas are known for is breaching, where they basically jump completely out of the water. We're still trying to figure out why they do that, what we tend to see is that whenever they make a kill, or if they have a calf making a kill, you'll have the whole family jumping up. Maybe that's their way of celebrating. Could be a form of play as well. There are things like sea lice in the water, and if they have some itch on their back, they can't really scratch at it. So sometimes they'll reach, land on their back, and it does peel off a bit of skin. So maybe that's a way that they can clean themselves. Another thing is that before a mating event happens, we tend to see the big male trying to put on a show with the female, aka jumping out of the water, creating a big splash. The bigger the splash, the more attractive you are, I guess. Happening in Gibraltar right now. Maybe it's just a bit of a trend, maybe it'll die out, but like I said, it's been 6 years and it's still here. We've seen trends as well. Orcas have been known for going into kelp beds and just grabbing the kelp, draping it on their bodies, swimming around with it as a bit of a toy. But we haven't really seen it here as of late, so maybe that trend has ended now. Another example is in Sunshine Coast. There's an area called Roberts Creek. For the longest time, these orcas would go over to Roberts Creek and just rub their bodies against the rocks as a bit of exfoliation. But we also have not seen these things. Mostly this one happened in the 70s where one of the southern resident locals, she killed a salmon, and instead of eating it, she placed it on top of her head and swam around at the surface with this fish on her head. And then the next day, the rest of the family was doing the same thing. Within the week, the entire population was doing it. It's just a bit of a fashion trend. It lasted about 6 weeks. Died down, came back again 3 years later, died down again. We had it happen last year in January, and it only lasted a few days, unfortunately. So hopefully they'll bring that back one day. If you do whale watching in California, there is the type A orca, and they'll often go after molas and where the molas is heads. Mola is basically this big circular sunfish, so on top of their head, kind of looks like a sombrero. It's pretty cool. Exactly, Rage. We refer to that as porpoising. Porpoising because porpoises, whenever they're going at high speeds, they'll be jumping out of the water, leaping out of the water. Whoa. To get a lot of hate back in the day, and of course the name killer whale derived from killer of whales because they would go out and kill different whales, and their Latin name is Ursinus orca. If you translate that, it translates to whale from hell. Because like these guys, they will go out to birds for fun. The residents sometimes they'll go hit porpoises up in the air, and then they'll get bored and swim away, and those will just be left there, even as food. I think my favorite one. We have a colleague who worked in New Zealand. He's seen orcas grab these storm petrels, a type of bird, by the feet and drag them underwater and let them go. And I guess what happens is that the bird will try and get back up to the surface really fast, but because of that pressure change, it kind of explodes at the surface, makes a popping sound. And yeah, if you have a hydrophone map, you can hear them just looking at this. One thing that's curious though is the capsizing of sailboats in Spain. As soon as the boat topples over, you have people falling off under. The orcas have no interest in humans. If you look online, there is no case of an orca killing a human. It only happens in captivity. find one case where an attack happened also, and it was in the 70s. It was a guy on a surfboard. I guess he was wading out to get a wave, and this one orca came up and bit down around the ribcage. As soon as the orca bit down, it let go right away. So what we think happened there is maybe the surfboard and the guy kind of looked it up like a sea lion going through the water. They're like goes, took a bite, but he must have tasted that or something. And let go. He did survive. He went to the hospital. He had about 132 stitches from that incident. Thankfully, it was never used to have normal accuracy. And in hindsight, they thought, you know what, maybe this is bad for tourism. But the negative view kind of changed after 1964. If you go to Vancouver Aquarium, you'll see that they have a statue of an orca outside in hide art. Originally, what they wanted to do was they hired fishermen to go out, kill an orca, and they were going to use the body of the orca as a mold for their sculpture. So the fisherman did so. He went out, killed an orca, started dragging it back. He thought he killed it. And the pod of this orca was chasing him. So he thought they were going to come, attack the boat, eat him. But the pod caught up to him, and they weren't focused on the captain, they were focused on lifting up that orca out of the water so that he could breathe. So the captain really felt bad because he saw that they have such strong family bonds and they were very caring. So he brought it to North Vancouver. They set up a saltwater tank, and he brought in a couple of veterinarians that they were trying to tend to the wounds of this orca. And then they tried feeding it horse meat, cow meat, saw that it wasn't eating, and then started feeding it salmon and saw that it was eating. So that's how we were able to determine that, okay, orcas, they do have very distinct diets, especially ones. And they were able to study it. We were able to learn how they listened, because they had a squirrel in the water playing some music, and then it came just resting its jaw right on the squirrel. So that's how we learned that they perceive sound. Word got out to the rest of Vancouver. So people started paying to see this orca continue because it's never really been done. And everybody fell in love with it because the fisherman, he would visit off and play like, oh my god, swallow to fetch with them. So people fell in love. And on a radio show, they voted for the name of this orca. They called it Logan Dog. Play on the just because the orca just picture what it was. And yeah, now you walk around town, go into the fish shop, you see lots and lots of orcas. At least for the indigenous species here, the orca represents loyalty and family. And it translates to the Spana word for it because they're traveling in a wolf pack almost. But yeah, they're loyal to one another. There are many tales of chiefs being lost. That's why I'm close to the shore. for any avid birds, we have been seeing a lot of different birds here. Like that one in front of us, that is a common loon.
Nice one.
It seems so playful today. Noticing that we're not going any closer just because we don't want to disturb them in the middle of hunting or in a lot of sites, a lot of experiences have shown that if we get closer to 200 meters, then we start to see a big change in their behavior. We're trying to keep it as natural as possible. And again, we don't want to be too comfortable with those too. There have been many bad cases of orcas getting too close to whales, orcas getting too close to coast. One thing happened the orca named Luna. Luna was a male. He lost his mom at a young age, around the age of 2. But as a young male would, he tried going from pod to pod to try and find his mother to talk to. But he never really stayed for too long because he would also go stay close to kill someone. And it was troublesome because people on the boats, they loved the attention of Luna. So they started feeding Luna, they started playing with Luna. Luna never really felt the desire to go find mom. And as this became a concern, the government met with some religious peoples and the scientific community. They were trying to figure out what's the best thing we can do for Luna, because something bad's going to happen really surely. And after a lot of days, there was one day where there was a tugboat going across the strait. And Luna got close to the tugboat, and the captain did the right thing. He turned off the engines. He wanted to wait for Luna to be at a safe distance. But when he thought Luna was at a safe distance, he turned on the engine and he started going forward. And lo and behold, Luna happened to be right underneath the boat when that happened. And that was the end of Luna. So that's why we really try and stress not to get too close to these whales. The mistakes with Luna were learned though, and 2 years later we had a similar situation with a whale named Springer. She lost her mom at an young age, and the government did not want to repeat what happened with Luna, so they set up this open net in the ocean. So Springer was in the ocean, but just really closed off. And they were feeding Springer, they were trying to nourish her, and after about 2 weeks, there was one day where Springer was seen rubbing up against the net, and she was vocalizing a little. And there was another pod about 2 miles out vocalizing as well. So the workers that day, they cut Springer free, and Springer did a beeline towards this family. Spent about 2 weeks getting to know each and every single one of them, until finally one of the females adopted Springer as the new mother. And this is great because she was similar to Luna in the sense that she would want to go and say hello to the boats, but the mom knew the danger. She was always seen going alongside Springer and directing her away from the boat, away from danger. I think because of that, she's still alive today, and she's had 2 cats since then. these are going to be our last looks here. Awesome, so you'll still see them as we pick up speed here, but we're going to continue south. Now we're going to try and show you what these guys eat. We're going to try and look for some sea lions. But once again, this family here, we got the 86As with the 124H. If you want to see what the dorsal fins look like, we do have catalogs downstairs. We'll leave the pages open to the family so you can see the differences. But we like to think we call them sea lions for the sound that they make. You can kind of hear it now. They make a bit of a roaring sound. Unlike your California sea lion, that makes a barking sound. Usually they're in massive groups like this. We call them Holland. Normally we can see a lot more, but I think some of them are out hunting right now. It's a healthy mix. I see a couple males, but on the smaller side, and females as well. The males do grow pretty big. They'll grow up to about 3 years long and weigh up to 1,000 kilos or 2,500 pounds. Females will be about 350 kilos or 900 pounds. So they're not exactly related to the lion. Yes, they kind of have a breed, but they're closest related to the land animal would actually be the lizard. Look at the skulls of both creatures. The skulls are basically the exact same, except the sea lion skull is a little bit bigger. Because you have so many sea lions here, the sea lions will attack back as a group. So usually if an orca tries to get a sea lion, it'll look for one that's by itself. Easier target. You can see these ones in the water here. There's about 4 of them, 5 of them swimming together. Safety in numbers. With that said, in the 4 years I've worked here, I've seen orcas circle this island thrice. So it does happen, but not too often. And these guys, they live for a while. They can live up to about 30, 35 years of age. They'll be sexually mature around the age of 6 or 7. And for breeding, most of that happens up in the top part of Vancouver Island and the south part of it. Say 70% of people happens up there. What will happen is that the males will go establish these territories known as rookeries, and they'll fight each other for that territory. And then the females will come a little bit later and decide on the territory. And then whichever one they decide, they'll be mated with the male. You'll have one male mated with those 50 females. As the months go by, we'll have a few of those males come back with a lot of bite marks and scratches. Those guys are the losers from the battle. And the cool thing about this species is that they kind of get to decide when they want to be pregnant. So you'll have the male fertilize the egg with its sperm, but for that to actually develop into an embryo, it has to land on the uterine wall of the female. The female dictates when that happens. She'll just wait until she has enough fat resource to do it. And this is kind of the normal behavior. They'll just relax on the rocks just like this. Most of the hunting does happen at night. They're eating about 6% of their body weight, and they'll dive down to about 300 meters to look for food. They eat things like fish, octopus, squid, even sharks. So go up a little bit more. We got a few cute birds at our 3 o'clock over here. There's 3 of them in line for one another. Those are probably our most beautiful duck here. We call them harlequin ducks, just because of their vibrant colors. They got colors like purple, harlequin, colors like purple, green, orange. A couple gulls as well. If you want to check out those sea lions over there. Same species, just in a different part of the island. Sometimes we do see some seals over here, but I'm not really seeing them today. Actually, they're on the far rocks way over yonder. And seals are a bit different because they are smaller. The main difference between a seal and a sea lion is that the sea lions, they can walk off and rotate those hind limbs. Yeah, exactly. They're just the one by itself, yeah. But normally we see them over two.
Yeah, that.
Yes. People will debate me on this, but yes, we do. We have one of them in this area called Nose Spotlight. Technically, it is a puffin because it does burrow. All puffins are technical, so that's a whole thing. We have 2 others, tufted and horned. They have been spotted closer towards Victoria, but most people go up to the Triangle Islands, top side of Vancouver Island, actually. Yes, stellar sea lion, harlequin ducks, the seal, the harbor seal is way over there, and then these ones here are also stellar sea lions. pretty well. They lowered their heart rate down to about 4 beats per minute. They have very collapsible lungs and good saline pressure of water. And they have a high concentration of myoglobin. That's our equivalent to hemoglobin, which holds up the oxygen. I see a couple of young American calves there, just lying down there too. And those calves are going to stay with mom for about 3 to 4 years. They can't really swim or that or anything. Not enough of these things. Main diet: fish, octopus, squid, shark. Fish more than anything. Salmon, they love the salmon. So whenever we have the Chinook salmon going towards the Fraser River, we'll see a lot of those guys up there. Even some of the California sea lions will go up. You can see there's this dark one climbing right on top of the lake.
Yeah.
You get no personal level of sea lion. They're always going to be each other's way. So good look at the sea lions here. We're going to continue on our journey. I think we're going to try and make our way back across the strait. We'll see. Okay, yeah, back across the strait. So it might get a bit bumpy. So I highly recommend getting a seat for this next bit. Out of all the marine mammals, these guys have the longest mammal migration. They go from Alaska all the way down to Mexico. That's about 8,000 kilometers. The thing about that is that usually when they go down, they're not eating all the way. Once they're down to Mexico, there's just no food. So all the food and they go here, down to Alaska. Now, why here? Where we are is facing the mouth of the Fraser River. It's very shallow over here, and because there's a lot of nutrients being dropped from the river, it feeds a lot of plankton, feeds a lot of crustaceans. What this whale is doing right now, it's going sideways and just grazing through the sediment, trying to stir up the sediment and trying to eat a lot of those tiny crustaceans. So crustacean, kind of like a crab or a shrimp, but they're ever so small. It was last seen in this direction. I don't know where it's going to come up next. As we saw, they are technically toothed whales. They are whales, but for these ones, they don't have teeth. They have something called baleen. Baleen, it's made out of hair, the same stuff as the hair and the nails. And how to think of it is, on the upper part of the nose, there are a bunch of hair brushes with these bristles that are pretty stiff. So what happens is that the whale will go over its mouth, take a big gulp of something, and with its tongue, it's going to raise depths because they are kind of neutrally buoyant. If they don't move, they basically float. If they want to go down. after spending time with the orcas, we went down a bit further to the Valdez Island, where we went to an area called Stinky Rock, and we saw some stellar sea lions, and there were a few harlequin ducks there too. But then we went across the strait, and then we went closer towards Richmond, so we found our way over 5 miles to Richmond. Show the names of each individual and when they were born,
です。